all manner of strange tongue. They seemed to be from lands far away from the Feverwood. Yet they spoke freely in front of me. Lovers, hiding from the rest of the world, would talk and laugh, sitting on my branches and sharing an embrace. Thieves would climb atop me and wait for their victims to come by. The curious would take pieces of my leaves and examine them, as if hoping to glean some understanding of the natural world. I did not mind being used in such ways, of course. I could not communicate to them, for such magic was beyond me in my youth. I could sway in the wind, bend my branches ever so slightly and rustle, but that was about it. More strength would come with time, but it would seem that on the 51st year, I had run out of time. A war campaign had begun in the Northlands. The savage and cruel Kree people had made their way to the human and elf lands, fighting in long, bloody conflicts. The Feverwood became a battleground, as it was the only connection between the Northlands and the great city of Orgmire. Kree, the green-skinned orc tribe, fought without regard for their own lives, whereas the human-elf alliance sought to preserve themselves. Battles erupted often, with both sides striking quickly, but the Orgmire soldiers would be forced to retreat. They always retreated. It was in this conflict that I began to understand what mortals did to the trees in times of need. Large, burly men, armed with axes and saws, took down tree after tree, hacking them to pieces so that they could create weapons of war. Siege engines, ballista, and barricades were erected in war camps by both sides. Fortifications were raised quickly and then destroyed within the week. My connection to the land allowed me to watch as these mortals ripped the Feverwood to bits. They were fighting so hard to gain dominance of the area that they neglected to realize there would be nothing left if they continued in their folly. The Kree finally advanced and claimed the land that I inhabited. Their eager, bulging eyes saw so much fresh wood, and soon they would set about cutting down my little neighbors. These trees had no conscious mind, nor a soul, so I did not weep for them. But I knew that soon the Kree would look at my large limbs, at the size of my trunk, and come to the conclusion that I would make for a fine collection of battering rams. 6 months the fighting in the forest continued, and by the end, sure enough, they began to speak of cutting me down. Such an endeavor would require great equipment, axes sharpened with magic so that they could cut clean through such thick wood. In the early morning, I watched the shaman prepare their spells, chanting and calling out to their gods to bring about a divine power to the blades of the woodcutters. The bearers of these enchanted weapons would bring their blades against their own cheeks, slicing their own flesh to show that they were prepared to sacrifice blood for their god. 6 in all were given the proper blessings. They approached me with little regard, as if I were nothing in their eyes. Of course, I was nothing to them. I was just a tree, a big one, but just an ordinary plant that would serve their purposes. There was fear in me at first. I had been gathering and storing my magic for this inevitability, but I was unsure of what I could actually do. Up until now, all of my magic had gone to nourishing my roots and growing my body. This would be the first time that I flexed my powers, that I manipulated the world outside of myself. As they approached, barking in their orcish tongue, mostly joking about how they would be using my limbs, I began to direct my magical reserves to my longest branch. I focused my energies, operating off of instinct alone, and, as I hoped, my limb came to life, moving as the mortals move their own arms. "What in the 7 flames?" one of the loggers shouted as I merely stretched my branch down to him. A display must be made, one that would discourage any discussion of bringing me harm. "It's enchanted!" he screamed as I flexed, wrapping my branch around him, lifting him in the air. He was small, a peon in comparison to the size of my limb, but spirited. He writhed and shouted, calling for help. I had